Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Paulo Sotero. I am the director of the Brazil Institute here at the Wilson Center. It's a great pleasure, a great honor to welcome Alexandre Barreto de Souza, the president of CADE, the Brazilian Competition Agency, and Marcio Bueno, president of IBRAC, the institute that of the lawyers specialized in this, in promoting competition and international trade. I'm very happy to have you here. I wanted to just take 5 minutes to explain where you are. This is the National Memorial to the 28th President of the United States, President Woodrow Wilson, of the Avenida Presidente Wilson in Rio. Okay, I always like to say that because people say, "What Wilson is that?" I say, it's that one. Is the only president of the United States to come from the academia. He was a professor of political science at Princeton University, one of the first PhDs in the United States. Became governor of New Jersey and then president for 2 terms during around the First World War. And as an academic that became a politician, he used to say that there should be in Washington a place where people that govern and people that study government meet, because one improves what the other does. And that's the idea of the Wilson Center, which comes from President John Kennedy and was really implemented because of a senator that was initially a Republican turned Democrat, Daniel Patrick Moynihan of New York, professor of Harvard before becoming a politician. The Brazil Institute is the brainchild of former President Fernando Henrique Cardoso, who has a history with us. When he was banned from teaching in Brazil, he became very active in, along with colleagues, sociologists and intellectuals in Latin America, to continue to work. That's when he created SEBRAP with the help of Ford Foundation, and got very much involved with the Wilson Center that was at that time thinking about creating a Latin American program that just turned 40, and President Cardoso was honored in this celebration of the 40th anniversary of the Latin American program in September. The Brazil Institute was also his initiative. He instructed his then ambassador to Washington, Rubens Barbosa, to shop around institutions like this one and see if they would have interest in establishing programs that would expand the discussion about Brazil. And there was a Brazil project that was established in 2000, and I was invited to join in 2006 and to turn the program into an institute. And that's what we did, and that's what we do, or we have done for the last 12 years. We have 6 floors in this building. We host programs, debates. This week, this is within the week, this is the 3rd one, because we had people from the Brazilian Navy last week here doing a by invitation only discussion on the Brazilian nuclear program, the nuclear propulsion program. We had then yesterday a discussion on the 4th discussion on the outlook for presidential elections in Brazil, the campaign, what's happening and where we are going. We were not able to clarify things very much, but we had the program. And we are delighted to have today Alexandre and Marcio and all of you. We believe that you do a work. It's very important for the modernization of Brazil, for the inclusion of Brazil in the a virtuous inclusion of Brazil in the world economy. We are not neutral about certain things. We are not neutral about democracy, about human rights, about economic integration. We think all those things are positive. And it's a pleasure then to be able to present, to have here a discussion on recent developments and trends in Brazil, in Brazilian antitrust enforcement. This initiative came to us from Marcio Bueno, the president of IBRAC, and I had the pleasure to be with him and his colleagues, including Guilherme Dantas, who we met in São Paulo to prepare this. So it's a great pleasure to have all of you here. I would like to offer the floor to Marcio to start us off. We have the biographies here at hand for you. I will not read them. You know who this gentleman is. He is obviously from the equivalent in Brazil, or the quasi-equivalent to the General Accounting Office, which, although it works in a different way, the government accounting, the GAO, and is a career public servant, and obviously very qualified for what he does, as has been his predecessors in CADE. It's a pleasure then to pass the floor to Marcio, who will offer some introductions also. Marcio.
Thank you so much, Director Paulo Sotero, for hosting this program together with IBRAC. I'm very grateful to my friend Guilherme Dantas for thinking about the Brazil Institute and introducing us to you so we could make this possible. It is clear that there are a lot of synergies between IBRAC and the Brazil Institute. And this is only, I think, the first of many joint initiatives that we will have to come. Our institutes share a common interest about public policies and a common belief about the potential of dialogue and cooperation to create sounder enforcement of law and stronger economy. At IBRAC, we believe that these goals are achieved through free trade, open competition, adequate consumer law, and compliance. Therefore, we couldn't be any happier to be here at this living memorial to President Woodrow Wilson, because he was so instrumental for taking competition and consumer policy to the next level in the United States. And in 1914, he created the Federal Trade Commission and pushed Congress for the enactment of the Clayton Act, laying foundations that still live today. He also earned a Nobel Peace Prize for the creation of the League of Nations. President Wilson's legacy certainly served as the inspiration to other world leaders. And as our very special guest, President Alexandre Barreto, will confirm, the FTC is an international benchmark to CADE. As Brazilians, we are also very proud of our competition agency, CADE. Even having limited budget, CADE has been very successful in attracting excellent professionals, and these individuals work hard to make the difference. One of them is President Barreto, that we have here, and also Commissioner Paula Azevedo. We have many others in the audience today as well. This allowed CADE to become one of the most reputed government institutions in Brazil, and also attracted international recognition, as it is considered one of the top 10 competition agencies in the world. As a result, CADE is again running for Agency of the Year award in the Americas tonight at the Global Competition Review dinner. IBRAC is also very proud to have many of our associate law firms and lawyers being shortlisted for awards as well. Good luck tonight to all. President Barreto took office last year at a very tough political environment in Brazil that we still have today, and had a very big challenge to keep up with the fantastic work of President Vinicius Carvalho and other predecessors. Almost a year later, we are very happy to see that he already achieved very important accomplishments. We would like to highlight two of them that can be attributed to his strong political administration skills. The important increase in budget for CADE and the institutional arrangement with the Brazilian Central Bank, ending a very long dispute over jurisdiction for merger review and investigation in the financial sector. We will now hear from him about recent developments and some of his plans for the future at CADE. And after his initial speech, President Barreto will answer questions from the audience. So if you'd like him to address any specific points, please write a question and send to us here. Thank you so much, President Barreto, for accepting our invitation and sharing our thoughts with the audience.
Hey. Good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon. Before I start my speech itself, I'd like to congratulate both Brazil Institute and IBRAC in the persons of Mr. Paulo Sotero and Mr. Márcio Bueno for organizing this event. Thank you. This moment represents perfectly one of the key factors of the Brazilian antitrust policy success. Last weekend, I was in Boston in another event discussing Brazilian issues, and I had the opportunity to tell a little bit about our national antitrust system. And it is amazing. It's amazing to realize, when people realize, the level of quality that we have achieved in Brazil. And I say we, because this is a building that we have been constructing together. Government, private lawyers, economists, academics, companies, a building that started almost from the ground about 25 years ago. And now we have professionals recognized all around the world, both in the government and in the private sector. And this event is an example of transparency and coordination between the government and private sector, very transparent and Republican coordination. And these both, also coordination and transparency, are very important principles for me and for my institution. So thank you again, Mr. Sotero and Mr. Bueno, for the opportunity to participate in this panel. Now I can go to my written speech itself. Okay. This is a very precious speech. Precious because I had to pay $3 to print each page of this speech at the hotel's business center. And you know, Marcy, it was the only option that I had. There is no competition there. But okay, 100 pages.
You could have sent it to us. We would have printed it.
I did.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I was invited to talk about the recent developments and trends in Brazilian antitrust enforcement. However, before discussing the subject, and to make it more comprehensive, I would like to take 2 steps back and tell you a little bit about the history of CADE and its domestic reputation. When I was nominated to assume the presidency of CADE, I was delighted to learn about all the prizes and the international recognition that the institution had won. But my predecessors know better than I do, but it wasn't always like that. The history that I am about to tell, the story about CADE's achievements, is in some way the story of David, as in David and Goliath from the Bible. I think most of you are aware of the story. A young and not very strong man defeats a giant experienced warrior. What you may not know is that CADE is known in Brazilian government circles as a David. And this is not because CADE is a small organization competing with a powerful or bigger one, but because of what CADE has accomplished. What David got in the biblical story was a victory despite his weapons, which were only a slingshot and a few stones. CADE's achievements relate to David's in the sense that both of them attained great results with very limited resources. I will outline how we have achieved the results that we have in the recent years. However, even the results that I am about to mention were mainly made possible due to the restructuring of the Brazilian antitrust system with the new law introduced in 2012. It's important to keep in mind that the path to CADE success dates back to 25 years ago, when the institution dedicated itself to continuous improvement. Coming back to the recent results, I will talk for hours and hours about CADE's numbers, but my main message here is that we are doing a very good job in a very good pace. We can give as an example our merger analysis. The average time of merger analysis in Brazil in 2017 was 30 days, to be more precise, 30.1 days, as you can see in the last bar. When it comes to cases that require in-depth analysis, this time can be up to 95 days. However, if the procedure is a fast-track one, it will only take about 15 days. And as you can see, these results are in line that we had in the previous years. I don't know if those numbers are impressive enough for you, but if I told you that the time for an in-depth analysis in France in 2016 took about 124 days, and the French competition authority had 15% more employees than we had, and the budget almost twice the size of ours, then these numbers may help put CADE's numbers in perspective. In the case of Germany, other example, a merger analysis for in-depth cases took 135 days in 2016, and they had 41% more employees than we had, and their budget was 64% than ours. I think those numbers support my story of David and Goliath when I said that we are achieving results on par with developed countries with much fewer resources. And also is important to note that we have succeeded in reducing the time of merger analysis without compromising the rigor of the analysis itself. That was evidenced by the number of complex cases analyzed in recent months, some of which were the acquisition of AT&T by Time Warner and the Dow Chemical DuPont merger last year and the Bayer Monsanto merger this year, just to mention some international cases. The rigor in the analysis is also evidenced by the number of mergers blocked in recent months, which were the Estácio Croton case in the educational market, Alessati Piranga, Mataboi, JBS Agropecuária in meatpacking sector, and recently the Ultragás Liquigás mergers. These good results are also reflected in our anti-cartel enforcement activities. In 2017, we have condemned 8 cartels and imposed $29 million in fines. Just to give you other example for comparison, in 2016, France had condemned 9 cartels and collected $18.8 million in fines. And just to be clear, I don't have any problems with France, okay? Considering all sanctions and pecuniary contributions collected in Brazil in 2017, the total is more than $180 million. an increasing number in the last years. After presenting those numbers, and I remember just a few examples that I could have much more examples, you must be asking yourselves, how did CADE to manage to achieve developed country results with developing country resources? If you remember the David and Goliath story, the king questioned David what makes him believe he could defeat Goliath, despite his size and lack of military training. David answered to the king that he had faith that God would not allow the giant to harm him. Well, we cannot have the same faith in God when dealing with cartels and monopolist behavior, so we adopt some instruments that allowed us to achieve better results. The first instrument that I would like to highlight is our leniency program. As most of you know, cartels are secret agreements by nature, and therefore their existence is difficult to prove. Fortunately, these kinds of agreements are also very unstable. This means that with the right incentives, we are more likely to discover the existence of a cartel agreement through one of the participants than by relying on investigation techniques. With this in mind, CADE created its leniency program in the year 2000, 18 years ago. By far the most successful leniency program in Brazil. The leniency program allows companies and individuals that are currently involved or that were involved in a cartel or other antitrust conspiracy to obtain administrative and criminal benefits through the conclusion of a leniency agreement with CADE. Just to show you the importance of a solid leniency program in the fight against cartels, about 43% of our ongoing cartel investigations derive exclusively from leniency applications. Add another 17% of the current investigations that have been derived from a combination of leniency and ex officio proceedings, and we reach 60% of our cartel investigations. Roughly, we can say that our leniency program is nowadays responsible for 2 of 3 cartel investigations at CADE. And it's also worth mentioning that the leniency program in Brazil is exclusively available for the first applicant, who benefits from total administrative and criminal immunity. It's also interesting to note that year after year, we break our record of leniency agreements signed. In 2016, we signed 11 leniency agreements and received 6 requests for leniency plus. In 2017, last year, we concluded 21 leniency agreements and received 12 requests for leniency plus. Nowadays, there are 4 main jurisdictions in which multinational companies look to submit leniency agreement applications. 4 jurisdictions: US, the European Commission, Japan, and Brazil. This information shows that our leniency program has achieved a great success and provides legal certainty for the applicants. Besides the benefits for the detection and deterrence of cartel activities, the leniency agreements bring great benefit to the country since they allow us to recover millions for the public administration per year. Another example that I can give of our success is about our settlement program, which one complements and reinforces our leniency program. As I said before, the leniency program in Brazil is exclusively available for the first applicant. The second and subsequent applicants may benefit from a settlement, although this does not provide immunity from criminal liability. The settlement program allows parties under investigation for antitrust conduct to put an end on the investigation by, along with other requirements, confessing the participation in the conduct. It's important to note that the settlement also allows the parties to have a reduction of the fine and a quicker and more effective enforcement of competition law, especially in complex cartel cases. It also avoids the cost of litigating in court and the parties to incur in recidivism, which can double the penalty in case of a second condemnation. In this sense, it's interesting to note that for each dollar recovered to the administration from a sanctioned process, we recover 10 from settlement agreements. In addition, in order to keep the results and to strengthen our performance, we have created new units specialized on investigative techniques and intelligence against cartel. One of these units is in charge of our so-called BRAIN project, in which we use artificial intelligence not only to screen public data and search for evidence of collusion, but also to help prioritize the targets of a down-raid operation. This specific project has called the attention of other antitrust agencies and international organizations. Our technical staff has already presented the results and functioning of the BRAIN project on the OECD and on the Portuguese Antitrust Authority, and we have received a huge number of requests of others antitrust agencies to come to Brazil to learn more about the project. Another way we have found to strengthen our enforcement capabilities was to establish partnerships with different domestic agencies. Just to give you an idea of our numbers, we currently hold technical cooperation agreements with prosecution services from 11 of the 27 Brazilian states, and with the Court of Accounts with 4 different states. Those agreements are very important because they allow us to exchange information, technical and logistical support, and launch joint initiatives. In this respect, it's interesting to note the role of the Federal Public Prosecutor at CADE. One of his main tasks within CADE is to issue opinions in the administrative proceedings for the imposition of sanctions for antitrust violations. Besides, despite not being part of CADE, the Federal Public Prosecutor has a seat in the public hearings at the tribunal. Therefore, the Brazilian trust system is one of the few systems in the world in which the Federal Public Prosecutor participates in an effective and independent way in the competition authority's running process. Despite the advances made in partnerships established so far, we know that we still have some steps left to make. Probably the most important one is about the relationship with the Federal Court of Accounts in the case of leniency programs. But I want to assure you that we have been working on that. In the same way, as Márcio mentioned, I'm very proud to say that recently we have signed a memorandum of understanding with the Central Bank of Brazil in order to coordinate and give better predictability to assessment of mergers involving companies in Brazilian financial sector. Before the agreement, we had a conflict of competence between the two institutions that caused great instability among market players. Now, we have agreed that roughly all the mergers in the financial sector must be submitted to both CADE and the Central Bank of Brazil, and the clearance will be conditioned to approval from both institutions. We also rely on international cooperation to strengthen our enforcement capacities. Since 2012, we have cooperated with several agencies around the world, summing up in 2017 to cooperation activities with 30 antitrust authorities from 28 different jurisdictions. The international cooperation is extremely important in our daily activities, not only because it allows us to exchange information regarding concrete mergers and competitive practice, but also because it allows us to do benchmarking and assess the best practice in a particular field which allow us to see if our practices are adequate or not. In this realm, it's important to note that much of our law and practice were strongly inspired by the best practice identified by international organizational forums like OECD or the ICN, the International Competition Network. In this regard, we have taken important steps towards becoming an effective member of the OECD Competition Committee. As you may know, Brazil presented a formal request to join the committee last December. A couple of weeks ago, we received an answer of OECD asking us to submit ourselves to a peer review process. After that, the committee will issue a recommendation to OECD's decision-making council on whether to invite Brazil to become a member. In another similar initiative, we have joined the Competition and Consumer Protection Program in Latin America, also known as COMPAL, which is a program of United Nations aiming at fostering competition and consumer protection in Latin America. The main idea is to enhance our cooperation with the Latin American competition authorities and contribute to the development of competition in the region. Well, now that I have presented the main instruments used to achieve the results that we have achieved, we must be asking ourselves if CADE can still be compared to David in size and in military experience. Have we earned some inches and learned to fight with a stronger weapon? Well, in one hand, we still face budget and human resource constraints. We are currently facing, in Brazil, an important challenge in terms of budget because the Congress has approved, in December 2016, a constitutional amendment that limits the public spending. It was a necessary measure in view of the structural fiscal crisis Brazil has been experiencing. In spite of its importance, the imposition of a ceiling on public expenditure made increases or even maintenance in the budget of government agencies more difficult. Despite we indeed had an increase in our budget in order of 50% in the last year. But we had a cut in January or in February in part of this budget, and now we're trying to revert the situation and reestablish the increase in the budget that we have obtained for 2018. Therefore, we have been emphasizing to our government colleagues that an increase in CADE's budget pays off. Raises in our budget represent only a small investment, since for every dollar invested in enforcement activities, we recover more than 20 times its value. On the other hand, we have been internationally recognized as the best antitrust authority in the America in the years of 2011, 2014, and 2016. Let's see tonight what we have. In 2017, and for the 5th consecutive year, we have been rated by the Global Competition Review as a 4-star agency. That means that we remain at the top 10 antitrust agencies in the world. By now, you must have an idea of the challenge ahead of me. When you take office in an important position in a failing institution, there is, of course, many things to do, but also many potential results to present. By the other hand, when you assume an important position in an already consolidated institution, you have an even more difficult task, that is to maintain the high level quality of the service that was already provided, which sometimes can be more difficult to present in terms of results. That was exactly the scenario when I took office last June. I hope that I have succeeded in showing during my speech that all the initiatives taken since my arrival was with that aim, the aim of continuing the good work it provided so far. But not only this, we have been working hard to also improve these results, bringing more legal certainty for companies under scrutiny, enhancing our enforcement capacities, and increasing our performance. I hope by the end of my term, a David a couple of inches taller could better represent CADE's image. That's it. Thank you so much.
I think we can collect, audio can collect questions if you guys have. But now you have to write them, Juliano. And I hope that some of you have already done this. Não, bem. Então, o Juliano vai escrever uma.
Would you like to make a question?
No, I have one now. Can I ask a question, not writing, just ask you the question? How many people work at CADE?
200 employees we have.
Wow.
200, just 200. And our budget, it's about $6 million per year, is the lowest budget in among all Brazilian agencies.
Yeah, you probably have the lowest number also of employees. Or one
This
of
number,
the-
I'm not sure about this, but probably.
Looks like a pretty efficient.
Yes, it is, it is.
Yes. And now, do you want to keep waiting for written questions, or you prefer to?
Would like to make a question, Márcio? I have a little problem because I have another event to attend in a few minutes, so I don't know if what we do. Do you have a
Only-
question, Márcio? No?
I have only one question. You mentioned about because the last time or the first time we had a event together, you complained that my questions were too easy. Now I'd like to make a more a tougher question. And this relates to the merger blockings that you mentioned in your speech. We had 4 in over the last 12 months, and this is typical for Brazil. So the question is CADE getting more strict against concentration, against mergers?
No, we can't say that we're being more restrict. I think those cases that were blocked, they had some very specific conditions and it was a very specific analysis. I don't know. No, I can't say if we are being more restrict. If you think that we had in last year almost 400 cases, 400 mergers analyzed, and we had 3 cases blocked in last year and 1 case blocked in this year. We have less than 1% of the cases analyzed blocked. I think it is in line with other jurisdictions. So definitely it's not a sign of more restriction in CADE's analysis, but well, there were specific cases that with specific conditions there.
Thank you. No, that was, I think, a good question because I also received that in writing here.
Same question.
Same question. And then there's this other one.
How are you doing to act with Banco Central in
Cases.
cases? Okay,
Antitrust.
as I mentioned, we signed the memorandum of understanding stating that we work together in not only in merger analysis, but also in every kind of work that we do in anti-cartel investigations, for instance. But what we agreed that in a merger analysis, we will share information, and both approvals must be given in the cases. But we have an exemption when we have a crisis and a situation where the Banco Central must give the approval alone, he will give the approval alone without the CADE's participation. But it's a very specific condition, and I hope I don't see it happens during my term. What is this? The agreement was about the recognition of both competences between Banco Central and CADE, and I think this was the most important achievement that we had, the recognition between both agencies. We also have more work to do. We have a project of bill being analyzed in the Congress, in Brazilian Congress right now. When we have this bill approved, this relationship that we are creating now will be stated by law. It will bring more legal certainty for this relationship. We also have a case being discussed now in Supreme Court, and we want to bring to the judge who is analyzing this case our memorandum of understanding in order to close this case as the Supreme Court.
Thank you. The other question we received was also about the central bank. And because of your time restraint, I think we can move on with our program. We would like to launch 2 new publications of IBRAC. One of them is about consumer law. We have, for the first time here in Washington, D.C. for the spring meeting, a delegation of lawyers that integrate the Consumer Committee at IBRAC. And they have prepared a book about an overview about consumer relations in Brazil, dealing with hot topics like data protection, recall, marketing, and others. So Thais, Laura, Carla, they are here, and they would like to be very happy to talk about the book in our cocktail afterwards. So look out for them if you can raise your hands. Great. The other publication, I think, we are very, very proud also because it's a fantastic example of public-private partnership. We have produced this book with answers to frequently asked questions on merger control. We had authors that are lawyers, but also many staff from CADE writing. And at the end, we got 40 articles with 93 authors. I think I'm afraid it is so good that International Council don't need local council anymore for getting these questions. Well, and I like to highlight the very hard work of the coordinators of this huge job, Guilherme Ribas, Mariana Vilela, and Zeca Berardo. Good timing, Mariana. Both books are available at IBRAC's website, and you can download from there.
For free? For
free, yes. There's these and the other books that we have launched on previous years here in the spring meeting are also available. So now going to end, but before ending, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors of this event. And Barbosa Musnick Aragão, BMA, law firm, Sescom Barrier, Demarest, Greenberg Cordovil, Lathan Watkins, LCA Consultores, Machado Meyer, Eliol Batista, Magalhães e Dias, Matos Filho, Mundi, Pinheiro Neto, Siqueira Castro, Tosini Freire, and Verano. Thank you, everyone. I would like one more time to thank Paulo, Anya, Aureo, all the staff here at the Brazil Institute and the Woodrow Wilson Center for welcoming us.
Thank you very much. I also forgot Carlin.
Carlin, yes.
Yes, who is, this is last week of audio here with us. He's headed to more important, better things, aiming at a master's degree later on at Princeton. And Carlin is headed to Cambridge, the UK, to start her doctorate there. But I'm especially happy to host you here today. You know, I am a journalist. I have worked in the media for more than 40 years. Adversity doesn't frighten me. I cover all kinds of controversies and wars, and so when we are facing in our country a very difficult moment, but it's very encouraging to know that while we are struggling, you know, those are the problems that where I like to say that all of our problems were created by us and all of our solutions are coming from us. Brazil is one of those countries that can really not blame its problems or on others, or is proudly building solutions like you are doing. And so it's very important to continue to highlight your work, and we will highlight what you have presented here. We hope that this is the beginning of a very productive relationship between IBRAC and the Brazil Institute at the Wilson Center. You are always welcome here to this place, and we will continue to be in touch. Thank you very much. Now we wanted to invite you to go one floor up to a reception at our dining room. So please join us up there, and Audio and Carlin will show you the way. Thank you.